Breaking news from the BBC today. French leader Marine Le Pen barred from running for public office for 5 years. Really? There was a popular candidate who the gangsters that run the EU don't like, and they've now been barred from public office. That's weird, isn't it? Never saw that coming 25 miles away. If you haven't guessed it, these are trumped up charges, and it's obvious to anybody with eyeballs. So I'm going to read you the story, and then I'm going to point you in the direction of a few other slightly older stories, which prove the point perfectly well, because you might recall, those of you that pay attention, that every single time the EU hits a bump in the road, things like this tend to happen, don't they? There's a laundry list of inconvenient politicians who the European Union have stitched up, and it perfectly proves the point that essentially the European Union is basically the continuation of Stalin's Russia at this point. So I'll briefly outline what's happened here, this painfully obvious stitch-up, talk about some more European leaders that have also fell afoul of the iron grip of the EU statists, and then point at some interesting referenda that took place in Greece, Ireland, France, where the general public unanimously voted to not buy in on some cockamamie European project, and then they promptly ignored them all. Yeah, brilliant that, isn't it? And remember, barring popular candidates is the only way to secure democracy. Yeah, in the same way that bashing your testicles wafer thin with a croquet mallet is the only way to ensure reproductive health. Right then, let's summarise exactly what's gone on here, shall we? Out of morbid curiosity, because frankly, we already know the answer before we start, don't we? Marine Le Pen has been barred from running for public office for 5 years, meaning she would not be able to run in the 2027 French presidential election. What a peculiar coincidence. She was found guilty of embezzling European funds, even though no one on the left has ever been found guilty of embezzling European funds, and the grey area surrounding the use of European funds is vast, confusing, and seemingly only there to trip up candidates that the EU don't like. Le Pen left the courtroom before the judge had finished handing down details of the sentence, and she'd also been given a 4-year prison sentence for the good of democracy. Elon Musk weighed in on Le Pen's sentencing on social media, calling it a political abuse of the legal system that will backfire. Similarly, former President of Brazil Jair Bolsonaro has also described the ruling as left-wing judicial activism in comments reported by the Reuters news agency. In 2023, Bolsonaro was also barred from public office for abuse of power when he summoned ambassadors to attack the legitimacy of Brazil's voting system. Of course he has, because the left keep on doing it. The authoritarian globalist sociopath don't care who knows it. Bolsonaro was banned. Matteo Salvini had his parliamentary immunity lifted so they could try and harangue him in the courts. Marine Le Pen's been getting diddled for years, and in Romania, Călin Georgescu, the right-wing candidate who unexpectedly led the first round in the 2024 presidential election, was barred from the runoff by a court. Again, blatantly undemocratic. If you disagree with the globalist sociopaths, they will crush you beneath their iron-shod boots. It's not a coincidence that every time a populist candidate arises, legal troubles soon assail them. Is it? Or is it just a coincidence? It's just a coincidence that the only big EU members who are getting diddled all the time happen to be populist candidates that disagree with the overbearing authoritarian globalist left. Think about it. And it's not just the politicians who are getting it either, ultimately because they are representatives of the people. The people that are really getting fingered is you. And if the aggressive persecution of the political leaders that you like hasn't provided evidence enough for you, just think of some of the big instances whereby they just spat in the face of the people and either totally ignored them or forced them to vote again. The Irish love that, but it happens all over the place. Let's just cover 4 or 5 of the big ones. Do you remember this one? When the Irish rejected the Nice Treaty? It was aimed to reform EU institutions for enlargement. Obviously, everybody knows what that involves, so 54% of them voted no. So what did they do? Well, they made some assurances on TV and they said, oh yeah, we'll definitely let you remain neutral, lads. And then then they made them vote again, and guess what? When they voted again, it passed with 62% approval. Funnily enough, this meant the EU was accused of disregarding the initial vote. But remember, it's okay when they ignore elections. Or what about this one? Do you remember this? 2005. It wasn't just the frogs either, it was the cloggies too. The French and the Dutch rejected the treaty, establishing a new European constitution. 55% of the French and 62% of the Dutch. So make no bones about it, they clearly and easily rejected it. The votes weren't even close, and the rejections effectively killed the new constitution. So what did they do? They repackaged it all into the Lisbon Treaty a year later, and then they just said, we're not going to require referendums for this one, and they passed it all anyway. So all those people in France and the Netherlands were just left scratching their heads going, hang on, we voted against it, but you pushed it through anyway. Yeah, because that's what they do. Protecting democracy, don't you know? Yeah, ignoring 62% of the country when they expressly tell you not to do something and then doing it anyway. Yeah, that's what they do. Protecting your democracy. I could go on. In July 2015, Greece held a referendum on a bailout package from their EU creditors, and 62% of them voted no. So what happened? Well, the Greek government got pressurised by the gangsters in the EU, so they accepted the deal anyway. Didn't see that staggering drunkenly over the hill 25 miles away whilst you wearing a yellow shell suit. And do you remember in 2008 when Irish voters rejected the Lisbon Treaty? 54% of them said no. So they waited a year and then they made them vote again, and they did a lot of aggressive gerrymandering and had the BBC and the Irish broadcasters and all the politicians draw ranks, and they forced them to vote again, and that time it went through with 67% approval. Yet another repeat vote reinforcing perceptions that the EU simply does not accept no results if they don't like them. Has the point been made? These are trumped up charges. The European Union is an overbearing, authoritarian, disgustingly immoral organisation that is sucking the coffers dry, taxing the balls out of all the citizens of Europe while all those slimy politicians attend sex parties and snort Colombian cuckoo dust off trafficked teenagers' bosoms. It's a really evil organisation. If those 5 or 6 stories haven't proved it to you over the last few years, all I can tell you is that you're not paying attention. And as I've said, I don't think we're going to be able to vote our way out of this morass that we're all collectively stuck in, especially in Western Europe. But hopefully I'm wrong. You never know. Stranger things have happened. That's going to have to do you for the day. I've got work to do. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you all tomorrow. Toodle pip. Cheers.